Heyo. So I keep getting like slapped in the forehead for not doing that second card when I did the South Node reading that came out. So here we are today because I keep getting reminders of this particular issue. Any other read that I do for myself. So I thought, fuck it, let's just do it. So the card that I didn't do with the South Node was fourth house, home. So the fourth house in the zodiac is Cancer. And Cancer being a water sign, you can kind of get that home is more of a emotional, spiritual kind of experience than a 3D physical structure. And for anyone who experienced childhood abuse and like family violence growing up, I think a lot of us can have this thing called existential homesickness, where we feel homesick for a place that we've never had that sense of safety and security and wholeness that that home would provide, right? And then you jump to the fact that Indigenous people, home is the land, and we belong to the land, not the land belonging to us. And the land is our home. It's our safe place. It's our security. It's our connection to culture. It's the sacred trees. It's the sky. It's the waterways. It's the oceans, the sand. It's the animals. It's all of that is a sense of home, spiritually and emotionally. That colonialism came in and interrupted in horrible ways, right? So there's black fellas that, like myself, who don't live on country, and there are people that will never reconnect with their country because, let's face it, colonialism and record keeping, not a strong suit, not an honest suit either. So in ways, the colony has disrupted some people's connection with that sense of really deep intergenerational home. And the narrative that gets spoken about on colonized lands amongst the settler populations is this idea that Aboriginal land is out there somewhere in the bush, you know, not the reality that every single piece of colonized lands is Aboriginal land, is Indigenous land. And has cultural significance to the nations of which that land is home, right? And that huge difference between the colonial mindset of home and the Indigenous mindset of home is we belong to our home. And the colonial mindset is the home belongs to us. You know, it's this ownership, this constant need of power, ownership, being able to dictate, yeah? Anyway, back to other stuff. Stuff I ask myself when it comes to home is, you know, Sin, how would you have liked to have been parented? And I jot down the ways I would have liked to have been parented. And then I try and implement those ways into my self-care routines. So the way I talk to myself, the way I stand up for myself, the way I guess the way I show up. I ask myself, and I have been asking myself this a lot in the last 4 or 5 months, do the people I want a home-like connection with, do they feel safe for me? And do they have a healthy balance in life? And do I feel safe for them? And do I have a healthy balance in life? And what does that look like if those things aren't in alignment, right? Asking myself questions like, is it time for this connection to end? Does this connection need a break for a while? Can this connection continue? And these are questions I come back to. I don't just necessarily make a decision and then not ever review that decision later on. I have also definitely in the last decade been really guilty of using my home once I was safe from my ex-husband and my kids and I had our own place as a place to protect me from the outside world. And over the last, I guess, 3 years, maybe, I have started to treat home as a place I prepare myself to go out into the world. I still don't like going out into the world a lot, but I think changing my mindset around it, needing home to be the place to hide myself from the world versus using home to rejuvenate myself to face the world. Yeah. And also finding that space in myself. Once I was able to work out, okay, how do I stop my brain and my nervous system and my emotions from being in a constant state of dysregulation and waiting for the next attack? I think it was having to, obviously do a lot of work in working out how to get these thoughts that were hurting me out so that they weren't constantly doing a circle in my head. And creating a safe sanctuary within me that I can go to, get my breathing right, quieten my brain as much as an AuDHD brain quietens, and I guess find a sense of home within my own body, which I think for complex trauma survivors, that can be a really hard thing to do, right? It's a work in progress all the time. Yesterday, prime example, my moods were fucking shocking yesterday. I didn't feel safe in my body. I felt scared. I had a lot of fear. I couldn't get a grip on my emotions in the moment. And this kind of doesn't happen to me very often anymore, but I was really able to tap into the fact that I was having a lot of fear coming up yesterday around something that I have no control over, right? all I can do is like manage what I'm doing. And yeah. So finding that sense of home within self is like a game changer. Well, it has been for me. Then you've also got spiritual homes. So people find a sense of home spiritually with people that believe in the same things as them. And there's a level of comfort with not having to explain why it is that you believe this certain thing, because it's just a given that that ideology is part of that spiritual community, right? So whether it's a religion or whatnot, the home can be found in spirituality, right? And I think that's been one of the strong points of the blackfella community, is that they can take our land, but when we all come together, we find home with each other, yeah, and a sense of solidarity, well, mostly, but yeah. And being that home is so much about safety and security, I mean, it's no wonder that colonial capitalist greed has taken the thing we associate with home, the physical structure, that that shelter that we live in, sleep in, if we're lucky enough to have that. Fuck, I don't even like lucky. If we are privileged enough to have that, and how the colonial imperialists have turned that into a ruling class game of deserving and undeserving, who deserves housing, who doesn't, who deserves that security and safety and who doesn't. And by also turning that human right into a profit and wealth making tool for these ruling class, it's all part of disconnecting us from that sense of safety and security that we can have with each other on a home level, right? Instead, it creates a level of competition. You know, and I think about hermit crabs and their transformational housing situation where they grow out of a shell, move out of it, move into a bigger one, leave that shell for someone else. And there's no real estate agents, no banks, no lawyers, no anything that is required. It's just a natural process that happens, right? And I think people forget, like, yes, we are human, and yes, we have this capacity for critical thought and whatnot, but we are still part of the animal kingdom, and we are actually supposed to move like that, right? We're supposed to move with each other in those ways that hermit crabs do. And it leaves me wondering, you know, imagine if we lived in a world where everyone has a home and a house, instead of a world where some people have a house but not a home, or have a home but not a house, and some people that don't have either. This type of violence of discombobulating the idea of home and housing is really new to colonized lands. If you look at the history of how long Indigenous people have lived on their lands, colonization is actually a very new thing on these lands. This land here has always been home. Here where I live on Darug country has always been home to the Darug people. Shelter has always existed on these lands, just not in a way that permanently changes the landscape. There was a time on these lands before bankers and real estate agents and developers and investors and stuff, where community looked out for each other and made sure everyone had what they needed. And everyone had a place. Everyone had a home.